Tithing is the number one thing people lie about. They twist the Bible, they ignore what the Bible actually says so that people can avoid tithing. And they do this because greed is the most powerful temptation. And because of greed, people don't want to release 10% to God. So we're doing a series on lies that people have about tithing. So we're going to cover the second lie, and that's this. Tithing is only part of the old covenant. Wrong. It is not only part of the old covenant. Now, it was part of the old covenant when it was established, and people did tithe to the Levites. But simply because the old covenant has ended, Romans chapter 10, and the Levites no longer offer sacrifices, they're gone. But that doesn't mean tithing is gone. Only tithing to the Levites are gone. But we find that tithing existed before the old covenant was established. In Genesis chapter 14, verse 20, it tells us that Abraham gave Melchizedek a tenth of everything. When did he do it? He did it 430 years before the old covenant was established. Now, you can't simply say, well, that's still the old covenant. No, it's not the old covenant. Paul makes it very clear in Galatians chapter 3, verse 17, that the law was introduced 430 years after Abraham. So even Paul distinguishes the difference between Abraham's walk with God and the law of Moses. And so the law of Moses ended, but tithing didn't end because Abraham is given a tenth to Melchizedek. So how can you say it's only part of the old covenant when Abraham is tithing before the old covenant is established? No, the old covenant did incorporate tithing, but it did not originate with the law of Moses. It began before the law of Moses. Therefore, you can't simply say, since that practice has ended, so has tithing ended. It's not true. Not only did Abraham tithe, and he wasn't under the old covenant, but his grandson Jacob tithed. Listen to what the scripture says. Genesis 28, verse 22. And Jacob says, and this stone that I have set up as a pillar will be God's house. And all that you give me, I will give you a tenth. Jacob is vowing to tithe to God's house before there's an old covenant. See, you can't argue that tithing was created by the Levitical law. Therefore, whatever the law creates, it can remove. But the Levitical law, the law of Moses, did not create tithing. It existed before there was any law of Moses. So any of the law of Moses doesn't do away with tithing.